Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at formatting data as JSON, and we're going to then go on in the next tutorials to actually send that data to a server. And your ultimate object here might be to communicate data to another phone, but as we've previously seen, the way to do that will be to send your data to a server, and then the other phone would have to be checking the server periodically, or it would have to have perhaps a socket connection to the server or something, so that it could then retrieve data from that server. So here, before we can send the data, we need to somehow format it, and I'm going to show you how to format data as JSON, which kind of assumes that your data is going to not be something like an image, but it's going to be maybe some integer values or text data like a username and password or something like that. So to send the data to a server, the first thing you need is, let's assume that you've already got the data to send. The first thing you need is either a JSON object or a JSON array to act as a root node. And I've set up this application here, and just like in the last tutorial, we've got an application and it's got a text area here which you can't really see, and it's got a button marked with send data, and if I click that button now, it's just going to run this method here. So assuming we've got the data we want to send, we need a JSON object or a JSON array to act as the root node for our JSON data. And I've looked into this, and apparently there's no rule as to whether your root kind of node in JSON has to be a array or a map. It can be either, and apparently also you can even have different values in an array of different types, which I didn't realize, and I don't know why you would want to do that, but it is allowed. So anyway, let's start with maybe a JSON. How about a JSON object? So I'll start with a JSON object. So I'll declare a JSON object, and let's call this root, and I'll set it equal to a new JSON object like this, and I'll add the input, Control-Shift-O, and now we can add key value pairs to this root. So I could say root.put, and it's just like using a map in Java. So let's say, for example, user, and I'll put my name here, John, and how about root.put password, and let's put some stuff here, and just to demonstrate, I'll put like a string of really crazy characters, including even some brackets and things like that. There we go. So you can send any kind of stuff there, although I would have to escape a speech mark if I wanted to use it to actually get it into the string. It would have to be escaped, but apart from that, you can kind of bung any old stuff in there. And let's also have, I mentioned, I think in the last tutorial, that you can have JSON objects that contain JSON arrays, and the JSON arrays can contain JSON objects, so you can build up really complex data structures. It's like maps of lists of maps and so on. So just to make this a little bit more complicated, let's have a JSON array as one of the values in this object, this map type object. And actually this throws a exception, so I'm just going to surround this with a try catch, and I'll put this one in the same try catch as well. And let's have here a JSON array. I'll just declare it here, I think. JSON array. Whoops, get the case right. JSON array, and what should we call this? Maybe let's call it animals, and set that equal to a new JSON array. And add the input for JSON array with Control-Shift-O, and now I can use put on this to add values to it. animals.put, and you see you've got different overloaded varieties of put, take doubles and booleans and whatnot, and so you can add values of different types in here. They don't all have to be the same type, and I can't really see why you would do that, because to my mind, if you had different types in an array, you'd be better off using a JSON object so that you can have keys for each value and say what it actually is, because to look at an array containing different types is quite confusing. You don't know what's going to be in each, what each value actually means. But we'll let that pass, and I'm just going to put some strings in here. So let's say kangaroo, and I'll add some more values in here. Lion, dog, cat, and I'll make this animals JSON array a value in the root node corresponding to a key. So I'll just say root.put, and we'll give it a key like animals. It could be anything, and I'll put the actual JSON object, the JSON array in there as the value. And now the final step is we say, let's say string JSON equals and the root dot toString, and now we've got our JSON. And to display that, what I'll do is I'll get the actual text view in my application. Let's call it text view, and I'm just going to use standard stuff here. I'm just going to use find view by ID and r.id.output, which is the ID that I gave to my text view. Add the import, and we'll say text view.setText JSON so that you can see it. Now, one thing actually I should show you is this toString method is kind of designed with the idea of actually sending data to a server, but there's also a toString method that takes a integer value, and if you supply an integer in there, it will actually format it to make it more readable to human beings. And the integer here is the number of spaces to add to each indent level, so I'll just leave it at 1 for the moment, and let's just run this application. And another thing that you're often going to want to do is often you just want to do a GET request to a server, as we've seen before, and send like an ID or something, or maybe send like a username or a password, and that it's actually the server that would send back the JSON. So here we're going to send JSON to a server, but you often want to do it the other way around. And if you search for something like JSON Java in Google, you'll find that there's a library that's included with Android, but you can use that library in your server program, if your server is Java, to actually format JSON the same way in your server. It works just the same, but you probably will need to include a extra jar. And of course, if you're using PHP or something like that, there are built-in methods that can format JSON, I believe. So I've got the application up and running, and let's take a look. And I'll just click the button here, and here's my formatted JSON. So you can see that because I started off with a root object as a JSON object, which is kind of like a map, I've got it's opening with this curly parenthesis, and there's a closing one down there, and here are my key value pairs, and you can actually see that the / in this password value has actually been escaped by a \, which is handy, and the other values, you can see user, these are key value pairs separated by colons. And here's my animals array, and you can see it's an array. Well, here's the key, and the value is the array, and the array is surrounded by square brackets like this, and I've got my animals coming out here. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we're going to send this JSON to a server. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.